Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hello everyone, this is Muhammad Imran. I welcome you all to my channel. Today we are with a new lecture. We will discuss today word. What is a word? Um, One of the properties of human language is creativity. So it means that human language is creative. On the other hand, the communication system of animal, it is fixed. They have some fixed signals through which they communicate. So the communication system of animal is not creative, while human language is creative. So it is this creativity which distinguishes human being from animal. So we will discuss today in our lecture the importance of words, that how important our words are for human being. And we will also discuss the different definitions to word and why all the linguists they do not agree upon a single definition. So before going to define a word and look at the different definition of words, we should know the objective of this session. That what do you want to achieve through this lecture? So the first objective of this session is to define and understand the term word. The second, to know the logic behind the ambiguity in the definition of the term word. And the third one is to know orthographic, phonologic, semantic, and syntactic definition of the term word. So it means that there will be different definition. One will be orthographic definition, one will be phonological definition, one will be semantic definition, one will be syntactic definition. So different definitions of words are there. And the last objective of this session is to understand the basic properties of the term word, that which word or which term we can call a word, or which term fulfill all the properties of a word. So let's begin and discuss. Now, what is a word? According to an estimation that average speaker of English speaks around from 45,000 to 6,000 words. So it shows the importance of words for human being, and it shows that how creative is the language of human being. It is creative because that every year or after every several years that we add new words in our dictionary and also in our mental lexicon, right? So as a speaker of a language, we have stored these words somewhere in our head and our so-called mental lexicon. So these all repertoire, or you can say that the collection of these words are stored somewhere in our mind. But how can we define the term word? It's a very complex phenomena because there isn't a single definition of word, and all the linguists they do not agree upon a single definition. So what is actually a word? We will go to the conclusion and we will sort it out now. Now let's come to define what is a word. This is the first objective of this session. According to Webster Unabridged Dictionary, it defines a word as the smallest independent unit of language, or one that can be separated from other such unit in an utterance, for example. So this definition, it's a very proper definition to word. It says that a word is the smallest independent unit of language. It's one is smallest and independent. Independent means that it can stand alone, or that can be separated from other such unit in utterance. For example, you speak and you are using several words, so each word would be separated from other one. But this definition is proper only to writing. When we write, so you see that there are spaces between words. For example, if I say that I teach English, so I is one word, teach is another word, English is another word. So there are spaces between I, after I, and then teach, and after teach again there is a space. So they are separate entity. So this definition is good and it fulfills our requirement, but only limited to like a written English. But you know that language primarily it is spoken, it's not written. So this definition does not fulfill like the definition of a spoken word. It fulfills only written word. But there are also a problem to this definition, even written when we write words. Another definition, that the best known definition of a word is that proposed by American linguist Bloomfield, who defined a word as a minimum free form. First, it's a minimum, smallest, right? And then free form, not bound form, right? One is free form, one is bound form. First, it is smallest, minimum. Second, it is free form. And by free form, he means that it can stand alone, right, in a sentence. Okay, it does not require any other word when it is uttered. That is the smallest form that can occur by itself. See, there's a smallest or minimum free form. That is the smallest form that can occur by itself. It means that it can stand alone. How is it possible that a smallest unit or minimum free form can stand alone? Like for example, if I ask you, okay, that who's living here, right? Who is living here? So you can tell me that Ahmad is. Even that Ahmad cannot stand alone. You will say Ahmad is. So again, two words are here. So here he says that it can occur by itself, but it cannot. Let me give you another example. Here, problem with how to define a word. I'll give you another example. If I ask a question, for example, that who stole my pen, right? And of course, you will say that, for example, that Ali did. So Ali is a word and did is also a word. So Ali cannot stand alone, right, without did. So it cannot stand alone like in separation. It required another word. So that's why that this claim is denied here. See, Bloomfield, he says that a word can be defined that it is a minimum free form, that is the smallest form that can occur by itself. And here we see that it cannot occur by itself, because if I say that who stole my pen, you can't say that Ali. You will say that Ali did or Ahmad did. So it cannot occur by itself. It requires another words. Or there is problem again with the definition of a word. For example, should fly and flew be considered as one word? Not at all, because several dictionary will consider them two words, because one is base form while other is past form, fly and flew. So some of the dictionaries, some of the linguists might call them a single word, because fly and flew is the past form of fly, while other linguists or other dictionary might tell you that they are two different words, because fly is base form while flew is the past form. Now if by word we mean lexical atom, like the technical term for dictionary entity, then the sound sequence fly represent two words. This is very interesting, since most dictionaries have separate entity for fly noun and fly verb. Most of the dictionary, when you check it, the word fly, so for one fly, they'll be written in front of them in like comma or inverted brackets and noun. While for another fly, they'll be written verb, because fly as a noun mean an insect with two wings, while fly as a verb, it means to move through years from one place to another, through jet, through aeroplane, through helicopter. So you see that now what should we consider? Should we consider fly as a single word or fly as two words? Because as a noun, it has a different sense, and as a verb, it has a different sense. As a noun, it gives different meaning, and as a verb, it gives different meaning. So how can we define then a word? That what is a word? Now, however, both of these lexical items have various syntactic forms. When they are used in a sentence, then they have various forms associated with them. Like this insect could occur as fly singular and flies as plural. So when we take fly as a noun, so it can be singular fly or it can be plural flies. Now, as a noun, it has two forms, fly and flies. So again, we have two words, fly and flies. And as a verb, this fly has at least 5 forms. Like fly as a verb as base form, flies as a present form, and flew, that is past form, and flown, that is past participle, and flying, that is present participle. So 5 forms as a verb and 2 forms as a noun. So almost 7-8 forms are there. So should we consider now fly as a single word, or now should we consider fly at least as 7-8 different words? It's a big question now. So that's why that we cannot define word very easily. So there are different aspects to define a word, and no one can easily define a word that what is a word, right? So let's further elaborate it. Now, before going to define a word, we should look at that word can be defined through different angles or through different aspects. So, for example, that a word can have orthographic definition, right? And a word can have phonological definition, and a word can have syntactic definition, and a word can have semantic definitions. So different definition of a words are there, so we will discuss one by one. Now, first of all, we come towards orthographic definition. Orthographic means that when we write, okay, or related to writing. Now, you might first think of the word as a unit in writing system. See, when we come towards orthographic definition, so you might first think of the word as a unit in the writing system. But I told you that language is primarily, it is spoken. Okay, it's a speech, it's not a written one. So you might first think of the word as a unit in writing system, and the so-called orthographic word, you could say, for example, that a word is an uninterrupted string of letters. That's very interesting. That a word, this definition, orthographic definition, okay, that a word is an uninterrupted string. Uninterrupted string, okay, these string of letters would come together. Letters which is preceded by a blank space and followed either by a blank, so there'll be, before there'll be a blank space and after there'll be a blank space, and then it is called a word. Orthographically it's called a word, right? Or punctuation mark might be there, right? Full stop or comma might be there. So they say that a word is what? A word is an uninterrupted string of letters which is preceded by a blank space. For example, if I write a word, if I write a sentence, okay, that I live in Nowshera. So before I, there is a blank space. And after I, there is a blank space. And before live, there is a blank space. And after live, there is a blank space. Before Nowshera, there is a blank space. After Nowshera, there is a blank space. So this definition suits only in writing system, but not in speech. So what would you prefer? For example, is a sentence that what would you prefer, tea or coffee? So in a conversation, A is asking, what would you prefer, tea or coffee? B say coffee. Now, another example, you see that what is one word, would is another word, you is another word, prefer is another word, tea is another word, or is another word, coffee is another word. So between each word there is a blank space. Now another example, that Benjamin's girlfriend lives in a high-rise apartment building. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now there's a problem now. Problem is where that should we consider Benjamin's a single word, a two word, because there's apostrophe in S. Now should we consider this girlfriend as a single word or two word, because it's a compound word, girl is a separate word, friend is another word, and when we combine it becomes like compound noun. So this is the question, that should we consider a girlfriend a single word or two word? Should we consider Benjamin's apostrophe S single word or two word? Should we consider high rise one word or two word, because the word is separated by hyphen? So should we consider is a single word or not two word? So this is a problem, okay, with orthographic definition of word. Now, what is the problem with this orthographic definition of a word? Let's see. Now, orthography, the written form of language, cannot be a crucial component of wordhood. There are languages like Chinese which don't insert spaces between words in writing, but speakers of these languages still know what a word in their languages. Even if we define a word orthographically, still problems are there. There are certain languages, for example, one of the example of language is Chinese. When Chinese write, so they do not leave any space. There is no blank space before and after a word. So then what should we call it? Right? So this definition of a word, orthographic definition of a word, then is not partially, it is accepted but not wholly, because certain languages are there where there's no space between the words. And the second, previously we discussed that sometime we might have like compound words. So should we consider those compound words as single or two word? There might be a noun plus apostrophe. So should we consider single word or two word? So problems are there with orthographic definition. Similarly, people who can't read and speakers of languages without writing system know what words are in their languages too. This is another proof that there are people who can't read and speakers of languages without writing system. Certain languages are there, only oral form is there, only spoken form exists, while there is no like a writing system. So then how can they define a word and what a word mean to them? Then this is a problem. Or there are people even who can't read, how can then they define a word? right? So one is that there are people who can't read. What is a word for them? And there are people that there is no writing system in their language. Then how can they define a word? So that's why this definition is not a complete one. So to summarize our discussion of purely orthographic criteria of a wordhood, we must say that these criteria are not entirely reliable. Furthermore, a purely orthographic notion of a word would have the disadvantage of implying that illiterate speaker would have no idea about what a word might be. Now, there's another definition of a word that is called phonological definition. Let's define what a word is phonologically. One could define the word as a unit in speech surrounded by pauses. When we come towards the definition of a word, forget about now writing system or written language. Now we are here with speech system. So one could define the word as a unit in speech. So we can define word as a unit, right? Unit in speech surrounded by pause. So when we speak, so before we utter a word, there will be a pause. And after we utter a word, there will be a pause, right? There will be a break. And when we utter another word, before uttering a word, there will be a pause. And after we utter a word, there will be a pause. So this is okay. They say that it's a unit in speech surrounded by pauses. Now this criterion works much better, but it runs into problem because speakers can and do make pauses not only between words but also between syllable. This is very interesting now. This definition is partially rejected and partially accepted. Partially accepted because there is pause between when you utter a word and there is pause after you utter a word. But there are people, okay, the criterion works much better because it runs into problem. What is problem? The speaker can read and do make pauses not only between words, but they also make pauses between syllable. For example, for emphasis, we have a word, we have a word, and a word might be of 2 syllable or it might be of 3 syllable. So one of the syllable, it might be stress, while other 1 or 2 syllable might not be stress. So when you are going to stress one of the syllable in a word, so you make a pause. So the pause is not only between the words then, or the pauses are not only between a speech then, but the pauses are also between syllable. So can we call then a syllable a word? Not at all. No, we cannot call a syllable a word because syllable can be only a, right? So a is not a word. So this definition has also problem. So problem with this definition or word, let's discuss. Now consider the following. A, tea's good for you. B, that shop sells teas from around the world. I ask him not to tease the cat. I ask him not to tease the cat. So in these 3 sentences, the first A, tea's good for you. So tease in the first sentence and tease in the second sentence and tease in the third one, A, B, and C. So all these T's have the same pronunciation, right? T's, T's, and T's. In A, the T's, it has a different sense because we are talking about T is, but we don't say T's, we say T's. It is pronounced in this way, T's. And that shop sells teas from around the world. So in the B, second sentence B, teas refer to variety of teas, right? Like from the teas come from different countries. There are a variety of teas. And in C, I ask him not to tease the cat. So this T in the C, tease has a different sense, to irritate, okay, someone or something. So where is the problem now? If it is a unit of speech and surrounded by a pauses, so the first one, right, it has a different sense, tease, and the second one, tease, and the third one, tease. So this is the problem with phonological definition, because sometime there might be different senses of the same like phoneme or the same phonological unit. Now come toward that tease is identical in all A, B, and C. So this tease is identical, but this tease has different senses. In the first one, it's a different sense. In the B, different sense. In the C, different sense. Now, Webster also states that words are typically thought of representing an indivisible concept, action or feeling, or as having a single referent. Now, if we consider, so in A, tease, the referent is different. In the B, the referent is different. And in the C, the referent is different. In A, the referent, we're talking about T, one, okay, quality. And now tease is identical in all A, B, and C. But in A, B, and C, this tease have different referent, right? So Webster also states that words are typically thought of as representing an indivisible concept, action, or feeling, or having a single referent. Clearly, the word tease in 4C has a different referent than tease in 4B, because in B it is a different variety of teas, while in A is only a single one T. So different referents are there. But the word tease also means something a bit different than the simple word tea. So in these all three sentences, A, B, and C, this unit of speech tease have different referents. Now, something like more than one kind of tea, this differences in meaning is conveyed by ending s. Now pronounce z or on the word tea. So, but this s ending is not an independent word, because tease apostrophe ns is not an independent word. Or in the second, like cells, tease is not independent. The s is not independent word. Or I ask him not to tease, again, not independent word. Rather, it must be attached directly to an independent word whose basic meaning it is modifying. So in this case, to indicate plural meaning, we can conclude that even though tease is just one word, the s ending is a distinct subpart that contributes some piece of additional information to the word's overall meaning. So this is problem with phonological definition, right? So sometime we will have the same phonological unit, but it will have different reference. So that's why partially, okay, might be that it's a unit of speech, before and after there is a pause. But the pause can occur also between syllable, this one problem. And here we see that the problem is word that sometime we will have the same phonological unit or the same speech sound before and after. There will be pauses, but it would have different reference and different senses.